Hey, I hope you're having a good day. Today I'm joined by my good friend Danny. And to give Danny a quick introduction, if you're not familiar with who he is, Danny is a holistic self-love coach who helps women to break up with the negative beliefs they carry about themselves. He's previously ran a digital marketing agency, as well as having mentored personal trainers to start and scale their own digital businesses. Right now, he's focusing on scaling the Self-Love Academy and moving into delivering an in-person workshop, which will bring together a holistic mix of somatic techniques, nutrition, movement, and hypnosis to help women transform into the happiest, healthiest, and most loved versions of themselves. All sounds amazing, Danny.
Yeah, it is. Good morning, Elon. Thanks for having me. Hope you're keeping well.
Doing good, thanks. Just went out for a quick walk there, got a bit of sunshine. That's the nice thing about living in Barca versus back home in Dublin. It's you can go out in the morning and you know there's going to be some sun and it's going to be at least somewhat warm, you know.
Yeah, are you far away from the beach?
15-minute cycle from the
Oh,
beach is
nice,
ideal.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
do you
nice.
know that the beach in Barca, we've already talked about this before, it's completely like given over. I think it was with the Arabs for the Olympics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's completely artificial.
Nice. Yeah, I know the Olympic Village is like down, I think towards, I think it's called Poblenou, near the Terra Glorias. There's this amazing like dome-shaped building,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's kind of, I think it's around that area, but I'm not 100% certain. But yeah, the beach here is like is next level. It's something else.
Oh, it's stupid. It's stupid. When I was over there, there's a big like cemetery or something down. I don't know what way it is, but I went with a guy from Pakistan.
Yeah.
Made a new mate over there even. And we went and it's got, I don't know what it was the largest cemetery I've ever been in. And the other way in Europe, like they don't bury people in the ground, they bury them in like mausoleums or like in the walls and stuff.
Hmm.
It's just looking around at walls of people. It's so weird.
That sounds cool. Yeah, it's like such a cool city to live in. It's definitely, I mean, Inchicore and Dublin is great, especially around Crumlin and stuff. But yeah, Barca is just like one step above. And like I'm from Mullingar, as you know, so it's like to go from Mullingar to Dublin to here is like just yeah, it's like a whole new world. But how's your week been going? What have you been up to?
Good. I was, let's see, bank holiday Monday. I took an easy one at the weekends and we went Monday, just a R&R day. Um, Lovely. We went for like a long walk in the park, but they have a dog park near us.
Oh yeah, nice.
We spent literally like an hour in the dog park section of the park where they have gates on either end. It's like a farm almost, and people just
Mhm.
have their dogs in there. So there's maybe 50 dogs surrounding us. And I love dog owners and dog parents. They're so funny. Like they're like shouting at them like their kids, like Rodney, behave, Rodney, be on your best behavior. And they all have these. The mad thing about all the like parents now, the dog parents they have these cool little gadgets. There's one of these things where it's like a water bottle that goes into a tray, and they just drink from the tray and all. It's mad. They are giving each other treats and
Or that thing that they have, it's like the extendable arm that they put the
yeah,
tentacle in and it goes, they control for miles.
yeah. So you'd obviously have some dogs that are like a setter. Like a setter is a dog that loves running all day for a ball, and then you have a golden retriever, and you just see like 20 dogs lining up and their eyes lighting up as soon as one person whips out one of these things to throw the ball. So we literally stayed in there for too long. I reckon we stayed in there for an hour.
Nice.
Just chilled, came home, had a bath as well. Just an R&R day.
Amazing. They
And
put some
then
lavender or some Epsom salts or something in there.
Some Epsom salts indeed. Yeah, a few candles, bit of music. It's lovely. I had a little Spanish guy in the corner serenading me and all. It was fantastic.
Mandolin.
Yeah, but honestly, chill yesterday. Um, Chill again, just a little bit of work, and then I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, and he does this free event every year. So I go to that. Like it's just virtual. I just attend that every year. I was meant to go to Unleash the Power Within
Oh yeah.
in Miami at the end of 2020, but then COVID hit. It was in November, and that fell through. So hopefully I get to go to that in person maybe next year because I think he's going to bring it back. I think it's the end of this year, but I'm not going this year. I'll probably go next year.
Yeah.
But he does his online event, and I was at that last night. That runs for the next 5 days. He got some like they're always cool people, but this year he has like he normally always has Russell Brunson as well, but he has Matthew McConaughey speaking this year. And
Okay. Nice.
Alex Hormozy as well, which would be cool. To see
Yeah,
them
Alex
make
is a legend for sure. If you're watching this and you haven't watched, and you run your own business or you're interested in business or anything related to it, Alex's channel is like just next level, because he's basically like 9-figure entrepreneur and gives away all of his stuff basically for free, which
Yeah.
is like something else. Yeah. So
What is it that like you enjoy most about himself? Because like I probably started watching his stuff. I wouldn't even say that long ago, maybe a year or so ago.
yeah.
But or whenever he brought out his $100 million offers, because I started seeing that everywhere.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. Like he just has such good insight on everything. Is like, because I obviously would have a certain opinion about, okay, this is how you do X, Y, and Z, because I'm only, I'm still very new to things, and I've only been running my own business the last like 5 years, and he'll give an insight on something that's like, that's so simple but so genius. Like, why didn't I think of that? And that's the exact reason why he's like so successful, especially with his wife. Um, versus just average mortals like myself.
Yeah, I'll join the club there. Yeah, like I remember someone saying something that like, when Alex speaks, he gives like something to do. Like he gives novels condensed into sentences, so everything is just value, value, value. He manages to make complex topics
Yeah.
stupidly simple, and then you're just looking at yourself in the mirror like, I'm an idiot. How did I know that? Yeah, of course you should do that. Duh. It's like even the title of his book. It's like $100 million offers. Make offers so good people feel stupid saying no.
That they can't refuse them. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, of course.
Yeah. It's like something I heard from Frank Kern before. It's the old trick of actually helping people, and then they seeing that value, and then they,
Yeah.
oh, this would be great to have him as a coach or to work with this guy. It's like it's an old secret trick.
Yeah. It's like just help people. I think that's like something like that gets lost sometimes in like particularly like the marketing era we're in with digital
Yeah.
marketing. It's about attention, attention, attention. But it's like just take some time to help people. Like we've all been there as like entrepreneurs, like particularly like if you're in the online space, you're like, oh, I just want to market more, market more, market more, and you get to almost get away from, not that you don't tell people, but you put the marketing over the help. And like in many ways, the best marketing is the help, because it's the word of mouth that then comes from those people. And when they start speaking about what you do, it's game over. Like you don't need to market.
Yeah, I think a huge thing I realized was that like you can pretty much give away nearly all of your best stuff for free to really show how much value you can give someone and to give them a solution. Because at the end of the day, them knowing that thing isn't what helps them to achieve the result. It's you providing the structure, the support, the guidance, the accountability, the helping hand to go from where they are now to where they want to be. Like information is useless unless you have the accountability to follow through on it. And yeah, that was definitely a big turning point for me, like seeing that realization. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because
And
go on. I remember like a lot of marketing like when you read marketing books, they'd say you tell them the what without telling them the how, and you pique their curiosity to want to learn about the how. But sometimes you can give them the how as well, and if they like it enough, they see the value in it. It's really just you can give someone your whole system, whatever you've built, for whoever you help, for whoever your avatar is, and what they need is the chat every week or month with yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, like how often before, I'm sure you've done this as well, but I've bought a good few courses before that was just like, okay, here's your login and here's the videos. And I never logged in. I might have logged in once, had a quick look through, but I never actually completed it. Or, I bought loads of, physical books or like a manuscript or something, and it was never implemented because there was no accountability or structure. Have you ever done that before?
Oh, too many times, too many times. And then like you get bonuses. You're like, oh my god, I'm getting all these bonuses. And then you're like,
Yeah.
I remember I bought like Rudy Mayer. I bought one of his courses before.
That was the one I was thinking of. Yeah, I got his like,
Yeah.
it was
And then you got sent like
$97.
a USB as well.
Oh, really? I didn't get
Well,
that.
I got that was from the bonuses. You get the course and you get all of this stuff on a USB. The USB is unopened in my room. I gave it to my brother. I was like, here, open that. He's obviously never opened it as well.
Yeah.
And I've maybe gone through 2% of what's on that, if even. Obviously, when I first got it, I watched a few videos, but then you're like, there's no one holding my hand here. There's no one in my ear every
Mhm.
day. On that point, this is an interesting one. I haven't started yet. I just got it yesterday on Audible. Um, Now, one of my favorite books when I like started even getting into kind of like all this stuff, like 6, 7 years ago,
Yeah.
was weirdly enough like the 10 Time Drill by Grant Cardone, right?
Yeah. I've read that. Yeah.
I think it's so simple. It's kind of the Alex Hormozy approach where like he just tells you things that are so simple that you're just like, you know what, Grant, fair enough,
Hmm.
right? But he did an Audible original that just got released a month and a half ago. I don't know if you've seen it, The 10 Times Mentor, where
Okay.
it's follow along. I haven't actually listened yet, so I could have got the wrong interpretation of it. But I had a few credits spare, so I said I'll grab it anyways. But he's
Nice.
basically follow along for like a month, and he kind of gives you the run through of like, this is what I do. And I like that kind of approach where you have someone like as a mentor in your ear. And
Mhm.
obviously, if anyone listening to this hasn't seen it, it's phenomenal. I haven't watched the last few episodes. I watched the first few though. He was on Undercover Billionaire on the Discovery Channel, and he just went from literally a nobody to building a business on paper worth $5.5 million in 90 days. And you're just
Amazing.
like, oh fuck, okay, this can be done, kind of thing. So he kind of, I haven't started that yet. I'll probably start it like, I don't want to take in too much information at a time. I don't like doing that
Mhm.
anymore. So I'll probably finish the Tony event, give it a week of just like trying to implement whatever happens there, and then I'll give that a listen. I'll let you know how it goes. But it's on Audible there, and he did it just with them, so you can't get it anywhere else.
Nice. I'll definitely check it out. And with the Tony Robbins event, I think I've seen the online one. Is that the Time to Thrive one with Dean
Yeah,
Graziosi?
yeah, yeah.
Nice. And the in-person events, like I've watched a lot of videos on
Mm,
YouTube. I'd say like most people have seen
yeah.
Anthony Robbins. I think most people would probably know him from that film, the one with Jack Black. I can't remember what it's called, but he was
Oh no.
basically Jack Black played this guy who had super high standards and like he didn't want to go out with any women unless they were like 12 out of 10 and just ridiculous standards. And Tony Robbins in the film like hypnotized them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very funny. I can't remember what it's called though.
I forget the name, but he was also in The Simpsons as well, which is so funny. Did you ever see the character they made in The Simpsons? And then he was in the boot in the car and all. They couldn't get rid of him. The CD was playing constantly. I think it was Homer started playing the CD or something.
Yeah.
And Homer started like, changing his life, and then they couldn't get rid of him. And they found out he was in the boot of the car. And obviously because he's like 6'7", and he had a
Very
really husky
huge.
voice. I can't even do his voice. It's so like it's like a smoker for 4 years. And
Yeah.
I reckon he's probably
Crafty.
never touched a cigarette in his life.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'd love to go to one of his in-person events. I love what he does. I think like he gets, for some reason, obviously anyone at that level is going to get some shade thrown at them, right? There's going
Yeah.
to be people who are trying to tear them down. But the one thing I love about Tony is that he, I could be getting these confused. I always get them mixed up in my head, but he follows like a bottom-up approach, which is essentially working with the body and then trying to change. Like he says it himself, it's like state, story, and then strategy.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I think it's that way. Whereas normally people go, they tell themselves about the their story, then they try and come up with their strategy, and then they go for their state, which is impossible. That's not impossible, but it's so difficult to change. Like when you try and like rationalize with an emotion, it's very difficult because you can't just think yourself out of like feeling a certain way. So if you change your state first,
Mm.
you're giving yourself the blueprint to change. So I love Wild Tony stuff. Like I think I was doing one of the exercises yesterday. Tony got people up for like half an hour doing all this stuff, and he does it all the time. And Ryan knocked on my door and said, "Can I come in for a second?" I said, "Ryan, it's a very bad fucking time. No, don't come in." Because like I'm jumping up and down, like doing all this mad stuff, and I had to one time.
Bioenergetics.
Yeah, and when people looked in the room, they would have been like, "What is he doing?" But I don't know. It's a lot of state control stuff, and it's awesome. Like if you do it, it's going to work. It's just basic physiology, but people don't do it enough. They try and like oh, we'll focus on like what are the words, but Tony's like, get up, move now, tell me now, talk to me now, let's anchor in this thought now, think with this, think like that. And it's all kind of like hypnosis and NLP in a way, but it's really fucking cool, and I
Mm.
have all the time in the world for that fella.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like it's something that I actually do myself and I implement it with clients as well. Like usually if I notice myself like that my energy is let's say 5 out of 10, or like before I do a session with most clients, I'll always ask like, what's your energy level today on a scale of 1 to 10? And if it's below like a 6 or below a 7, usually start off with bioenergetics and literally like you said, just jumping up and down and like getting like really loose and like just letting everything go. And like you look like an absolute crazy person, but when you do that for even like 30, 60 seconds, like you have to, unless you've done it, you won't like believe the difference. Like, because obviously it looks crazy, but when you do it, it just brings your energy up so much.
Yeah, and then when you stop doing it, you forget how powerful it is. Because I would have like stopped doing it for a while. I would have done it every day. Like state control was so important. But then when you stop doing it, you realize, Jesus, like like 90% of how I feel is based on the state I'm in, based on the physical state I'm in. Like it's like I've never had, and like not necessarily maybe like a self-critical thought, but I've never had like a negative thought about anything that's happening in my life when I'm like playing football.
Yeah,
My
true.
focus and my state are completely diverted from it. You know, I'm hardly running around the football pitch chasing someone going, oh geez, I can't wait, like, oh, X, Y, and Z. I might be like, oh shit, that should have been a better pass, or oh shit, I should have saved that as a goalkeeper, whatever it was. But yeah, like, and then you realize how powerful it's like Jason Capital is someone who used to like do all like, you know, barking and stuff, and Elliot Holtz, he's gone a bit off the walls.
Yeah, Elliot, I used to follow Elliot back in the day, like 2012, 2013. That's who I got the bioenergetic stuff from initially. But yeah, as you said, I don't know, he's changed it.
He's gone a bit new age spiritual and wacky and stuff. But like each to their own, you know, like I'm like, hey, listen, do what you need to do for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just when you're in that state, when you're doing something, you're just you're present in the moment, and you're not thinking about past or future, and you're literally just in that moment in pure presence. And yeah, it's such a powerful thing. And is that something that you would focus on a lot, you know, with your clients, especially that you're working with now, like trying to get them do those, like implementing different things to help them get them in the right state of mind to allow them to feel present and all the benefits that brings?
Yeah, 100%. So when I worked with, like, for a while, I just worked with men. I just worked with men who were like in their late 30s to early 50s who just felt kind of that they were losing their mojo, essentially. They just didn't feel like the men they were. And with them, this was about 2 years ago, we focused on a lot of like high, I guess high frequency state control is the way I describe it. Like, this is people getting people like, you know, almost feral in a bad sense, not a bad sense, but like these are men who just felt deflated. So if I give them like an ounce of masculine energy in some way, that would be very like X, Y, and Z. Whereas now with the women, we can change the state, but most of the time it's not necessarily getting them hyped. It's getting them just to think on gratitude and memories and things and moments of delight that they're proud of, as well as doing some breath work around that and some releases, some somatic stuff, which is just reframing, but it's a somatic reframing. So for men, it would be very much like you know, words like certainty, like power, control, stuff like that. Whereas for the women,
typical masculine traits.
yes, exactly. Whereas for the women, it would be more so like gratitude, connection, love, all of those kind of all of those are the emotions and words are what we kind of focus on more so. So 100%, I think, you know, if I start a session with someone, and sometimes we might just do like a session on belief or whatever it may be, and I might do a little bit of guided meditation, a little bit of somatic stuff, some tapping or whatever comes up on the day, a bit of
is it EMDR, is it?
EMDR is the eye movement, the
oh yeah, what's the tap? There's a specific
the EFT, the emotional freedom technique. It was Nick Ortner who kind of put it together, and a lot of people use it now. But that's fantastic. I find there's so many different like little things like that work so well to just bring someone's baseline anxiety levels down. So if I have someone who has a lot of anxiety in their system, I want to get into their body, but I don't want to peak their anxiety. I don't want to put more adrenaline and cortisol into the system. And I know, like, you can reframe that in the moment and say you're not anxious, you're just certain and excited. But to someone who is highly anxious, that's really, from my experience, anyway, is not going to help them. What does help them is almost calming their nervous system through movement. So again, the movement, as I said, for men is more like get the nervous system upregulated, whereas for women that I work with, it's getting it downregulated. So tapping is a nice way to get back into the body, and we just do that with some mantras and stuff like that. And it looks, again, if you haven't seen it before, it looks stupid or looks mad, but it works. It's one of them things, like it works. Try it, and like it works. It's like, as we said about Tony earlier, like, what is he doing? Try it. It works. It works wonders.
Yeah, I think that's the first step, isn't it? Is that we all have, whether we want to admit to it or not, we all have an ego that works as a self-defense mechanism. And it's like one of those defense mechanisms that we don't want to feel stupid. So that puts up a wall of being like, oh, that looks stupid, I'm not going to try it. But when you let that wall come down, you actually try it. And a lot of these things work really well. And shout out to my physio, John Shevlin, back in Dublin. He's the one that actually introduced me to tapping and like a lot of those different kind of nervous system like resets, almost as a way to like kind of reconnect and bring, get yourself out of that fight or flight mode. And yeah, it's really cool. So they're like a few of the practical things that you would actually use to help get into, just a more present state of mind. There's a good few of them that you went through. So guided meditation, the tap in, gratitude, even just going back into like memories. And so that's a lot of like practical, useful things that, you can use. Obviously movement is another, practical one as well. So when it comes to movement, are you focusing more like on, doing like yoga style stretching, or more like high intensity workouts or cardio, or like what do you find helps someone who's in a more like, let's say, anxious state to feel a bit better?
Yeah, normally it's gentle movement. Now you can get someone strength training, but sometimes their nervous system can't handle it. So for them, it's mostly, I find movement, like even walking outside is fantastic. Like something where I can get someone to reconnect. And what I will say to them is intentionally take your walking speed and half it. Because a lot of people would just want to walk to the place they know they're walking to and walk home. And that's my walk done.
Yeah.
That's my walk done. But this isn't like, there's no reason for walking. Like you can walk around your house one lap and or if you can, do that around the block. And that's more impactful and beneficial to your nervous system than just, walking to this point and walking back as quick as you can. For me, it's not about like the movement will still burn calories, right? For me, it's not about how many calories it burns and for the people I work, for the women I work with anyways, it's about just bringing their body back to a place where they feel like they can move and can do all these things again and want to do all these things. Because yourself, if you build self-efficacy in one area, it kind of snowballs and goes into other areas. So a lot of time, it can just be walks, but it's walks with intentions. But sometimes the intention is to not have an intention, if that makes sense. It's just to be present. It's just to, stay outside. It could be, if you have a greenery outside your house, do that. If you want to be hippie, like I love, just take the feet out and do some grounding. Just feel what it is, wiggle the toes around. And all we're trying to do is get people to a position or a place where they can act from without kind of having any bounce back. So yeah, a lot of movement is that. But then there's also some people who are, love the strength training and X, Y, and Z. And ideally that's the place we get everybody to. Yeah. So if someone comes to me week 1, that's not the place they're in. But week 12, because I know the benefits it will have.
Yeah, just a gradual progression. And this isn't my line, but I heard this from one of my coaches that I worked with in the past. And I think he got it from his meditation teacher. But we're called human beings, not human doings.
Yes.
So just being, is like what we should be all about. And I think we get caught up so much in the rat race of like constantly like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, and I need to hit XYZ goal in this time frame, and I need to, and then that's literally upregulating your nervous system, going from, parasympathetic to that sympathetic tone and fight or flight mode, and brings up your subjective stress levels, and then before you know it, you're on the path to burn out and you feel miserable, and then your mental health takes, and it's just like one thing after another. So yeah, it's just like going to be a downward spiral for sure.
And it would be remiss for me to sit here and like say that doesn't happen to me. Like I think that happens to all of us, where at some days we'll just get completely overwhelmed and we'll know we're upregulating ourselves and you almost can't control it. Mm-hmm. So like things that have helped with that when I get to them are like check-ins throughout the day. Like I'll have reset blocks where I do nothing other than take a few minutes to tap. And like with something that's, in the body, Sometimes I won't even have an intention for it. I'll just do it. You know, because sometimes I find as well when you're trying to firefight and you know you're trying to firefight, you get frustrated. You're like, why did I even get in this position in the first place?
Mhm.
Oh, I got myself stressed, and now I have to get myself unstressed, de-stressed.
Yeah,
It's like sometimes you leave your headphones in your pocket and you don't do anything. They get tangled. It is what it is. You know what I mean? Just bear with it. Detangle them. They'll be fine in a second. Um. So yeah, it's something like I'm like, yeah, we're all guilty of that. No one's sitting here. Well, I mean, maybe Shaolin monks or Tibetan monks are sitting there and just chill Zen. Maybe not Shaolin monks, they're warriors, Tibetan monks.
Mhm.
Whereas yeah, like we're firefighting as we don't like firefighting, but like we all have to do it from time to time.
Yeah, definitely. I think somebody's trying to break in there. I don't know what the story is. They've definitely got the wrong house. But yeah, I think just having those, having that basic strategy of knowing that, like, okay, I can do some gratitude. I can slow down on purpose when I go out for a walk. I can do all these different things. And I know that most likely after I've implemented them, then I'm gonna feel a lot better after it. And I have no idea who's outside. He's persistent, but I'll give him
I'm not
that.
trying to come into your house.
I don't have anything due. Haven't ordered anything, so I don't know what the story is. But yeah, like just having that simple strategy. I think knowing how to get yourself out of that, super, high, toned like fight or flight mode back to a position where you are more relaxed is really powerful. So it's really cool to hear that. Would you say that's a kind of a cornerstone of, your coaching and the program that you implement, is that really empowering your clients with all of that? So then when they do finish up, they'll know exactly how to continue on with that.
Yeah, 100%. I think giving yourself even an ounce of control over your nervous system is a superpower. But
Mm.
I'm quick to tell people you can't control your nervous system. Like you can, you can't. As in, there will be times where, as I said, you could get completely, deregulated. Your nervous system is thrown all over the place. But that's fine. That's normal. You're allowed to feel that way. Um, what normally happens though is people just have no way of controlling it. If you're a subjective, in terms of your own stress levels or anxiety levels, like an 8 out of 10, if we can even bring you down to a 7, that's a win.
Mm.
That's a win in my books, instead of that going or stopping it from going any higher. So, it's not like we have these tools and you just do them and you don't feel anxious anymore. But what you do is you kind of build momentum in the direction that you want to go. And that's all you need to do. So yeah, those techniques are part of every session, because it's like for the first time, I know we talked earlier about, like, feeling silly doing something. I remember seeing Wim Hof. I remember even introducing
Wim's the man.
to yeah, and I was like, that isn't for me, you know, not for me. And I remember doing it the first time, going, whoa. I remember the exact time I was like, whoa, this feeling is crazy. And then I got my brother to it maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and I go, I know it looks stupid. It's 11 minutes, this video. It's only a couple of rounds.
Mm.
Try it and let me know how you feel afterwards, because you can't fake feeling.
No.
And he just goes, that's crazy. Sometimes even though we know it feels good, it's still hard to like actually do it. Like, I know I feel amazing afterwards, but like, I haven't done that in months. I do other stuff, but like I haven't done that in months.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with all of these techniques. Like, try them, and the feeling you get, it's the same thing. Like, some things aren't meant to be described; they're meant to be felt.
Mm-hmm.
And the sense of calm, you'll see your nerve. Like, there's so many signs of a nervous system downregulating. A yawn is one of them. A sigh is one of them. A deeper breath is one of them. All of these things, you'll see a bit of more of your vision start to open up a little bit. You get a little more panoramic view, and you'll see those things. You go, oh shit, my body's, and then that can kind of cause a positive feedback loop where you're like, cool. So yeah, the techniques are like paramount to what I do. We have to do them every session because we have to get someone feeling first, feeling
Mm-hmm.
into their body, get them out of their head, and then we work from there. Okay, cool. You're kind of regulated now. That's fine. We'll work from there. Now we'll talk about, okay, exercise and stuff and nutrition during the week. Because otherwise, they're like, oh, blah, blah, you know yourself.
I'm overwhelmed. I can't
Yeah.
do this because of XYZ.
Yeah, you're gonna think I'm the worst client ever. Like, I'm sorry. Like, they have people almost like,
Yeah.
feeling guilty if they don't do that. It's like, you don't get me wrong, you are there as a source of accountability, but accountability just doesn't mean point and
Mm-hmm.
condemn. or
Exactly.
condescend. Don't do this. Why do this? It's, dude, we're on the same side of the fence here. Work with me
Yeah,
here.
we're on the same team. I'm going to help you to work through this for sure. Yeah, that's super important. I think that's a big misconception that a lot of people have, especially if they're thinking about working with someone in some capacity, especially like a personal trainer or someone like yourself or someone like me, that they think that it's going to be this is all your fault, and as you said, pointing the finger and
Yeah.
shouting abuse and stuff like that. And unfortunately, the reason that a lot of people have that kind of perception is because that's how they've been treated in the past from maybe colleagues in work, their teachers in school. I had one client recently join up, and I can't remember the exact words, but she was basically telling me that she was working with this guy, and around Christmas time, I'll have to paraphrase, but he basically said something along the lines of, "You don't want to be fat for the rest of your life," but he had a few curse words in there as well, and something like really demeaning and like horrible. And she was telling me that as soon as that happened, she was like, "Okay, I think we'll have to finish it up." And I was like, that was, I'm not that surprised, but it's such an unprofessional thing to do, and so like not the right way to go about it. Because as you said, like when you're working with someone as a coach, we're on the same team. I'm here to help you to work through this difficult period, whether it's you're busy with your kids or busy with work or whatever it may be, and we're there as a helping hand to give you that support, not to point the finger. So yeah, I think it's an important thing to address, because would you say you've talked to a lot of people who have that similar kind of perception of like what accountability looks like?
Yeah, 100%. And don't get me wrong, like that is a tactic that can work, but it'll only work with a certain demographic of people. And
Yeah.
it's not something I'd ever recommend. Like, you can focus on moving away from pain or towards pleasure, as the saying goes. I always focus on towards pleasure. Sometimes away from pain can be a good motivator, but it's the way in which you do it. You can tell someone to this or that to that, or you can, find another way to tell them, the pain is coming up. You can say that. You can just give examples. They might talk of like, medical conditions, and then you can just say, well, do you want to feel this way forever? Is this something you want to move away from? Sounds like this brings you a lot of pain. Instead of saying, yeah, you're this, you're this, you're that. Like, do you want to be like that forever? Like, there's a very subtle way in which you can have the exact same effect without need to be a dickhead, essentially. And that's kind of why, like, I don't consider myself, you're probably the same, like a personal trainer anymore.
No.
We're kind of like holistic coaches. That's kind of the way I describe it. Like, and I think once you take a holistic approach, there's no going back. You're never going to go back to just going through. You can still train people in person, because I'm like yourself. We both love movement, and we'll still get a kick out of training people. But that's like a smaller part of what we do.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think just going back to that point about, people who are like, it's like the carrot or stick analogy.
Yeah.
So people who use the stick to beat people, that is a strategy that can work. But in my experience, it's very short-sighted, because you can only keep beating somebody for so long, and they might stick to whatever you're giving them training wise or food wise for 6 months or a year or 2 years, but eventually then it becomes unsustainable, and then they end up really not enjoying what they're doing. They end up hating it. They end up not liking that person, obviously, because they're super mean to them, and then they end up just going back into old habits, and then that puts them in that yo-yo cycle of now feeling even more demotivated, because they've gone through this really stressful time, and then all the results that they might have got, they maybe, if someone wanted to lose, like, let's say 20 pounds or 2 dress sizes, they lost it and then they gained it back and then some, because of now all that extra stress on the nervous system and just a traumatic experience in general. So it's not a good strategy at all.
Yeah, I think coaches don't realize the trauma that they can inflict
Mm,
on their clients. Like, I know you mentioned the carrot and stick there. Like, when some people say, well, I don't want the carrot. It's like, there's nothing wrong with the carrot. It's just you don't have the person hungry enough yet. You don't have them in a position where they believe they can go to where, not the grass is greener. The grass is greenest where you water, as they say,
mm,
but they can go to that positive future. And maybe the image of where you're telling them or towards pleasure just isn't crystal clear enough for them to go, yeah, that's somewhere I can go to. Because if you go to someone who's had years of trauma and years of, people telling you the word lesson to say, oh, there's a time, not too far from now where you don't feel this way, they'll say that doesn't motivate me because I can't see myself being that person. But if you work on a lot of state change, and I do a little bit of hypnosis, and we do all that stuff where we just basically, in other words, it's like a form of guided meditation. If I was in person with someone, you can do a little bit more stuff, but that's fine. You can really do a lot of belief change there, and then they go, you know what? Yeah, that's something I can be. Tony's awesome at it again. Tony's awesome, but I think that's a good point you
He's a
brought up because
master.
people don't realize that, like, I think coaches, what I mean, coaches don't realize like the person that they're getting is that turns up to them is a multifaceted being. Of course they have goals, but they also have their traumas, their history, everything that's made them who they are.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying as a coach you need to work through all of them with someone. That's not our job, but our job is to be aware to the best of our abilities
Absolutely.
and just not make anything worse.
Mhm.
Definitely, that's like a no. That's like a non-negotiable. That's like the lowest barrier entry here. Don't make
Yeah.
it worse.
Yeah, I think just having the awareness of it is the biggest thing, and a lot of it comes with maturity.
Yeah,
Because I know for myself, when you first start out, you're self-training or working with clients initially or helping people towards their goal, all you're thinking about is, okay, let's do this training plan and let's do this food plan.
yeah,
And as you said earlier, like that's a very small portion. That's maybe like 20 or 30%. And over time, I think, I know for me anyway, like after I worked with a counselor for like over a year and then really started to take a deep dive into my own mental health and asking myself the question of, why do I feel depressed? Why do I feel anxious? Why am I, implementing different behaviors that are like numbing myself when it comes to, drinking or whatever it may be. And when you take that deeper dive yourself, then that gives you like such a better perspective. And then you realize like, oh, the training and food side of things is like very small portion, because unless you can help someone build that awareness around their own traumas and how that affects them, and helping them to understand why they feel a certain way and why they're stressed, then nobody's going to change until you work on every aspect. um, and obviously though, it's important to realize we only have a skill set in a particular department. And I think it's really important to, if someone needs to work on their mental health, like I'd always like prioritize that and be like, look, I'd be happy to work with you, but I think you'd be better served working with, this mental health professional to work through these different things first, instead of, I think no one went to refer out, I think is a good skill.
yeah. That's big. Like, my like a lot of my techniques are just to help someone regulate for what we do moving forward.
Yeah.
We don't work through things, like we're not meant to work through things. We can do some belief work. It's a basic, reframing, but outside of that, knowing when to refer and having people at your disposal who you trust to refer to is also, um they're part of your extended team in many ways. They may not work directly with you, but having them is cool because you then can have like a referral system, in other words, where they refer people to you and you refer people to them. So that's like a nice thing to have as a business owner as well. Is like, well, these don't really fit into my niche of what I do. It's outside my scope of practice. But then the other thing the exact opposite could happen, where someone could go to a mental health professional that and they're looking to more so, now that they've worked through a lot of things, improve their relationship with their body, heal their relationship with food, and that's things that we cover anyway. So yeah, I think knowing when to refer is big, and not taking on too much as well, because you can think as a coach you have to kind of solve everything. Just solve
Yeah.
what you're focusing on, and then you know something solve themselves in the background as well. And you're like, whoa, that's crazy. We just did a bit of this, and some of this is cleared up for you. That's fantastic.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think like a lot of people initially will come to someone like us. And the way I look at myself is that I'm kind of just like showing you the path, and like, here's what you can potentially do. But at the end of the day, I'll be there to support you, but you're the one that has to walk the path. And the further that a person walks down it, then, they start to peel back the layers of the onion. And then maybe over time they realize like, oh, yeah, maybe I do need to go more in this direction of, my mental health, or more in this direction of working on whatever it may be. It's different for everybody, of course. But yeah, it's all super, really interesting stuff. And it'd be good to like switch gears for a second away from, you know, the work side of things. And like outside of work, what would you say is like your main passion or the things that you love to, you know, spend your time mostly doing?
I love cooking. Like I fucking love cooking. Like being like half Italian, like we just grew up with food constantly.
Yeah.
Whenever I go away on holidays, we just get force fed until we just came back as fat little babies, which we did. It was definitely a fat little baby for a long time. And then obviously like I grew up above a chipper as well when I was a kid. So I had I had, you know, a hyper palatable diet for a long time and I loved it. It was beautiful. It was fantastic. But not something you'd keep up necessarily into your adulthood. You know, you start eating like a little bit more like an adult, whatever that means. So cooking's a big one, you know, I cook or bake or do something every day. Like I'll bake focaccia or fresh bread pretty much every day. I find it to be therapeutic.
Nice.
I have a starter in the fridge at the moment. I'm gonna go take it out, add some flour to it, fill up the starter again. I always have some bread going. Um, love sports. Like I love watching sports as well as a fan. Big fan of MMA. Big fan of darts is another big one. Football. And then playing instruments. I'm getting there. Like I play guitar a bit. Played it a couple of years now.
You can play the mandolin for yourself when you're in the bath with the candles.
Yeah, that's what I do. You're giving me ideas here, and I'll get a little. I get a little mandolin, but I have a little 3/4 size guitar, so it actually probably would fit in the bath with me. But yeah, they're things I love, and I also love marketing. Like I know it's business related, but like you know, outside of that, I just love seeing marketing. I love like what I mean by that is I guess I love the psychology of human nature, which is something like I read about all the time. I love kind of what makes people tick and what kind of makes people what makes people act. So like a lot of behavioral psychology and what we can do not to influence behavior, but I just love more observing it at large and seeing what happens. And then I love reality TV. Like an example of that, I like fucking enjoyed Love Island. That's my guilty pleasure. I love Love Island. So that for me, I look at that and I look at that in terms of like, you know, not the drama. I'm just like, oh, this is what I would have done, or oh, this makes sense as to why this happened. And no, this is obviously going to happen. No, and you can see people walking themselves into positions, into traps, and you're like, ah, for fuck's sake. So they're all things that get me going. I love a good rave as well. I love a good rave.
Of course. I'm partial to one myself.
Yeah,
Not
always
as much anymore, but there was more than a few before.
Yeah, I haven't been to a rave in ages now, but yeah, I love a good rave for now and then. I feel like it rejuvenates the soul, and I think the biggest thing is like, you know, I've gone to raves completely sober as well. That's the somatic release. That's why people find it so I think so therapeutic, because some people like talk about raves as therapeutic, and like people who don't go to them or don't understand it, like, what the, how is it therapeutic? It is.
Like when you're there from like some nights that I went to in Amsterdam, like you literally get to the event at 12 and you'd be there till 7. And it's the same thing as like when you're training or playing football or whatever. It's like you're so present in the moment. Like for those 6 or 7 hours, you're not thinking about, oh, like I forgot to do this thing, or you know, when I did this presentation 3 years ago, I messed up my words and everyone was like looking at me funny, or you know, you don't have that like anxiety. Well, I know I don't anyway, and a lot of people probably don't as well. And it's like anything that helps you get into the really present state is like super powerful. So yeah, it's great. And obviously, like, I mean, if you can do it while being sober, that's great. I mean, if you enjoy a few drinks or whatever, like, it's no problem with that either. Like, but
Yeah.
whatever works best for you. But yeah, I think having that time out is super important, because it's so easy to get caught up in just always being goals focused is, I mean, it's great to do that, but it's like, it takes a toll if that's all that you do, you know?
100%. Like I think you need to always have a goal, but like, you know what I mean? Like it's a Saturday evening. It doesn't need, it can wait until Monday, or it can wait until whenever. Because I felt victim to that for a long time, whereas like I wouldn't get to switch off, or if I was switching off, I wasn't present at all. I'd be like, okay, I can't wait until this is done. I'm leaving at this time, so I go home to sleep for this time. Then I'm awake at this time, and then when I'm awake, I'm gonna do this time. And that wreaked havoc with me for a long time. So
Mhm.
having the wherewithal just to, again, that is a form of self-regulation, just going, it's fine. Not that we sweep it under the rug and we'll deal with it tomorrow kind of thing, but in a way where it's like, it's fine that I'm not thinking about it right now. I don't have to feel guilty about not thinking about it. And the biggest thing is I don't feel like I'm playing catch up when I go back to it,
Yeah.
which is like, it's left off where it is. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, they're all things I enjoy doing.
Nice. Yeah, an analogy. I like to use analogies for everything. It just for my brain, I don't know, it just works well. But like on that same point of what you said, like the way I look at things is like it's like a staircase. It's like every step that you take in the right direction, it is another step up, and you're always like leveling up. And the staircase is literally just like there's no end to it. And so like it's very easy to get caught up in that of like, oh, like if I'm not always doing something, it's like then like what's the point? But when you look at it like that, of like, okay, like I did, these 5 amazing things Monday through Friday. And I know that from my gratitude, journal that I did this morning or whatever. So that's 5 steps I've taken in the right direction. Like, so then it's no problem for me to switch off today and tomorrow, and I'll get back to it on Monday, and then I'll just keep moving on up, one thing at a time. And kind of on that point of what you were saying about, you know, having some like struggles in the past with that of like not being able to switch off, like what do you feel are like some other like struggles or dark times that maybe you experienced that like at the time was painful, but now looking back actually turned out to be, a really positive turning point in your life?
Yeah, well, like, I'm quite open with this. The start of last year, in February last year, I, in other words, had like a nervous breakdown based on my work output. And I'm not saying I was here working out the Swanee. It's more so I never switched off mentally. Um, and I just had to start having panic attacks, and I've never had a panic attack before then until that point. Or looking back, I maybe have had one where I had a bad experience with weed, which was what I'd say would have been a panic attack looking back on it. But I started having panic attacks, getting anxious, um, and it all stemmed from work. It all stemmed from pressure on myself to perform. It stemmed on that pressure also coming from unconsciously or subconsciously comparing myself to where I think I should be compared to where others are, compared to where people my age are, compared to what I believed I should do in life and what I should get out of life and what life should give me. So there's a lot of like rigmarole to that and how we kind of got there. But long story short, I was left in a complete daze. I started getting crazy anxiety symptoms. I was agoraphobic for a while, meaning I couldn't leave my house. And these are things that
What's
like
that term? I haven't heard of it before.
agoraphobia, AGO or A phobia, agora, where essentially you can't, not that you can't, but you feel like you can't. And I mean, again, the feelings sometimes they do lie, but
Yeah.
what I mean by the feelings don't lie is that it feels real. So, if you're in an anxious state, you're buying it, Um, so, if I could only get a certain distance from my house, and then I'd start feeling panicked. And sometimes I would have a panic attack. And my panic attacks, um, I had two bad ones. One I ended up in A&E for last year. Basically, I had to rebuild from that. So with all of that, there's things I've never ever experienced before. And when people would meet me at the surface, they'd say, "Oh, you're very chill," and X, Y, Z. And to be honest, I present that way all the time, anyways. But what was going between my head? It's something I was constantly like, um, "Oh my god, I feel so anxious." I just like very focused, like this problem needs to be solved. This problem needs to be solved. And having ADHD as well, that would make that so much worse. I'd just try and solve every problem in my head constantly, and I'd have so many things juggled in my mind. So that forced me to essentially take a massive step back from the point of everything was going the best it's ever been on paper, in theory, to everything collapsing and me not being able to work, me not being able to get on a Zoom call because I'd start panicking and dissociating. And I get really bad like derealization, depersonalization. The only way I can describe depersonalization is if you have ever had a bad experience with drugs before, it's like you're having a bad trip, but you haven't taken anything. So you're so confused, and then you start panicking because you're like, why am I like this? I'm sober. So that all happened in February of 2021, which is 18 months ago or so. And I couldn't properly leave my house until maybe August. So I had a good 6 months of barely being able to leave my house. I could, but I'd have to be sheltered,
Mhm.
or I'd have to get a bus here, or this and that. Um, which was crazy. Like it's mad. So that completely flipped, and that's when I decided to change avatar, because for once I felt like I understood. Like I'd always say, like, and I would feel anxious. I'm not saying like I used to say I felt anxious, but I didn't. But then when you get diagnosed with anxiety disorder, it's night and day. You can't get away from it. So when I had panic disorder, I had anxiety disorder. I say I had, like, I'm still working through them, but they're not really an issue anymore.
Mhm.
You then start to understand, okay, there's so many people that go through this, and a lot of the time they might be as acute as I was at the time. They might just kind of be coming through, but they don't necessarily need just training and exercise or a nutrition. So I decided to kind of reframe my model. I got big into trauma work. Um, I know you're interested in that stuff too.
Yep.
A lot of Peter Levine stuff. Um, then through all that, we kind of came up with all of these, kind of reframed my whole approach to what I do, and I had to also essentially take stock of my whole life and where it was going and the trajectory it was on, and repicture that completely, and also have a sit down with myself and repaint, like, where does I want to go, but also like who I am as a person. So like I had to kind of reinvent my identity and lean into things that I wouldn't have, leaned into before, parts of my personality. uh and one of the big ones was letting go of, any images or any issues I had surrounding my body, because for a while, and still now, it's difficult, but I do it. I couldn't really train. So, I just sat there, and for a while my appetite was gone. Thankfully, it came back, and then I was eating but not really able to move. When I moved for too long, I get dizzy, like vertigo almost, where I'd literally fall over, or I'd feel faint. But yourself, when your blood pressure's up, you're not gonna faint. So be that, then I'd panic when my heart rate got over a certain amount. So there was so much work that kind of went through all that. Now we're about 18 months into it now, and it's still not gone, but it's in a position where I can live my life again. I can go travel and stuff like that. And there's one guy, because I remember, who suffered something um similar, and he has a kind of page. He's from Dublin. I don't know if you've ever seen it. He's on YouTube as well. He's called From Panic to Paris.
Okay, haven't heard of him.
He's a guy basically kind of went through something similar with the agoraphobia and panic disorder, and I got lucky. In my eyes, he didn't leave his house or his estate for 10 years,
Oh my God, that's
and then
that's imagine.
one day, kind of just went mad and went for a run and just kept on running and felt like he was gonna die and all these things. And it's hard to describe those things to people, because you're like, if I say that to someone, if I would have said that to myself 2 years ago before any of this happened, I would have been like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
But experience is and perspective is king. It's like, yeah, fuck, like, I understand what that feels like now. I understand what it feels like to feel like you're having a heart attack when you're not, and then being in A&E, anxiously waiting to tell them what's wrong with you, having health anxiety for a while, because when you don't know, you start coming up with your own ideas of what's happening. Or maybe I have a brain tumor, or these symptoms are so weird, so I went to get MRIs and all that bollocks done. And
Mhm.
long story short, we're off the other end of it now, but it's nice to have that experience in a weird way. That's the positive, to be
Yeah.
able to take that forward to clients and understand when they say, I'm too anxious to get out of bed today. Don't get me wrong, I'll challenge any thought, because we should challenge any thought, but there's challenging and then there's like understanding as well. So you can challenge a thought,
Understanding.
but if the
Yeah,
thought, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
there's knowing when to not push, and knowing when to not push is massive. That's probably my biggest takeaway, because before I'd be like, it doesn't matter how I feel, I can push. But your body, as the saying goes, your body keeps the score, and your body's way more intelligent than you are. So mentally you may feel fine, but your body knows. And that's what kind of started my first panic attack looking back, because I felt fine mentally,
Hmm.
I'm like, I don't feel stressed. I'm grand. But my body was like, I'm way ahead of you, dude.
Yeah.
I'm way ahead of you. You have some work to do, so we're gonna give you a lesson right now. And it did. And as much as the pain there was, and still is at time to time, I'm grateful that it happened.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. It's like really appreciate you, having the strength to be able to, share that. It's it's absolutely amazing. And I think that'll be it's so powerful and helpful for both men and women, but especially for men, because I know personally, allowing myself to be vulnerable and open up about struggling with, feeling depressed sometimes and feeling anxious and, a lot of different things was probably like the hardest thing that I ever had to do. I know there's a lot of men who are in a similar situation where they feel like they can't open up or they can't be vulnerable because they have this preconceived notion that a man is someone who is strong, who is can handle everything themselves, and they don't need help from anybody else. And that's obviously those traits are important. But then when you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable and you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, it snowballs into something similar to what you've experienced. So yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. It's really powerful. And I think it'd be also really helpful, when it comes to a panic attack. I think I've experienced one before, but everyone probably has a different, idea of what that is. Or for someone who hasn't, had or maybe experienced something like that before, like how would you describe that feeling of a panic attack?
Yeah. So the main differentiator, so there's an anxiety attack and a panic attack. I think I've only had a few anxiety attacks, but I've had many panic attacks. Which is interesting because I'd say I've suffered more for anxiety today, but for a while maybe I was in a state of a constant anxiety attack. Anxiety attacks would be slow building throughout the day, and you'd feel yourself getting more and more stressed
Okay.
to a point where you kind of look around, and it's like you played Call of Duty as a kid.
Oh,
Of
like
course, right?
does
It's like
Santa wear a red suit?
so it gets to a stage where you're so overwhelmed by your own thoughts and your body starts acting up on you. You start feeling sweaty, you start getting some palpitations or whatever it may be. And then it's like someone dropped a flashbang. And you look around and everything starts to feel real slowed, but fast, but different. And that's kind of the anxiety attack. And that lasts a little bit longer, but it's not as intense as a panic attack. That's how I describe it, anyways.
Okay. The
You feel like,
flashbang is really
yeah,
helpful. Yeah, especially if you've played any type of Call of Duty or war games, you'll know exactly what that is, like
yeah.
kind of haziness.
The way I describe it is it's as if you didn't actually hear the flash go off. You just got landed in the flashing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas a panic attack, it's like a grenade gets thrown at you, I guess is another analogy I can use. And it you see a grenade there. And I guess if I told you there was an open pin grenade that just got rolled into your room, how would you feel?
I'm gone.
Yeah. So you want to, but you can't move. That's kind of like a panic attack. You're sitting there. You're sitting there and you see it there. And what would happen is, for me, my vision would just completely come in and I get tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And then my heart would start beating and I'd feel it beating. And then I'd hear it beating in my ears. And I'd be like, oh, fuck. And then I'd start getting like pains as well. And then you're in it. So what do? You try and resist it. You try and fight it.
Mm-hmm. That makes it
So,
worse.
of course. Of course. Because your body's like, okay, why am I afraid of this? Oh, shit, there's actually something to be afraid of now. Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
So it amplifies it. So, and they come out of nowhere as well. I remember the worst one I got, which is the one that left me. Well, there's two. One left me in A&E, and one just left me like bedbound for like literally bedbound for a week. Was I was cooking my dinner, and for a while it's matter your brain has these associations. It's making prawns. I couldn't have prawns for 8 months. Someone could cook them for me, but even looking at them would make me anxious. It's fucked how your body works. I think it's fascinating because like I know, rationally and logically that's so stupid. But I understand why that's happened to some extent, why my brain's made a neural connection
Action.
with that experience and what happened. So
Yeah.
I was just cooking some prawns And then I start feeling like, well, my vision essentially told me that that pan felt like, well, I was looking at it, my depth perception, your depth perception kind of goes when you're in that state as well. When you're in that really heightened firefly, say, the pan was like 50 meters away from me. It's hard to describe. Like, it literally looked like it looked like I was looking down off my balcony towards the ground. That's how far away it looked from my hand. Yeah. And of course, when you see that, I mean, listen, your eyes are the only external part of your brain. They are your brain. So that's your signal that's going in. You start going, what the fuck? Your amygdala lights up. You're like, what the fuck? So then, that one led me to a position where, like, I got into the room. I had to take off all my clothes. This is so fun. I had to take off all my clothes because I was just sweating profusely. I was panicking. And then I was on the phone with someone, but I couldn't even hear what they're saying. I was like, oh. And they're trying to, like, calm me down, give me some affirmations and stuff. But these are one of my first ones. And yeah, it's crazy. And then it kind of, it stops, but it doesn't stop. It just, you notice it shift, like we said, with the anxiety from the 8 to the 7, or the panic from the 8 to the 7.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get any worse, but it's horrific. It's horrific. What the best approach to any panic attack is that you have to be okay with allowing them to happen, as awful as they are, and almost attacking them before they happen. So if you feel panicked, bring it on. I want a panic attack. Come on, do your worst, mate. That's kind of the approach they say that works. People are like, oh, hyperventilate and stuff. For a lot of people, sure, that are breathe through a straw, like a paper bag, the old school methods, they don't always work. Like, sometimes, like, you can think yourself into one, which means no matter how much you change your body, it's happening. So at that point, just burn off the excess adrenaline. You may feel like, if I'm lying down and my heart rate's 130, the last thing I want to do is start running around the place.
No,
I'm lying down.
Not good. Not good at all.
My heart rate's 130. The last thing I want to do is get up and start shaking off this energy. I'm like, bro, there's only so many more beats my heart can go.
Yeah.
It's not going above 200 today. I'm not doing sprints. I'm just walking around my room. So you do have to kind of burn off that energy, because, you can find peace in the fact that it is your nervous system. And with your nervous system, it's just depending on the state the nervous system is in. So when you're that high, it's off the chain. You can't bring it back down. You got to kind of, the only way you bring it back down is by spending the energy. So you can do little things that help, but once you're in it, just know you'll be out of it in a few minutes. But it feels like a lot longer time. But yeah, I don't know. That's my experience with them. And for a while, I had about 5 a day.
Wow.
Sometimes more. I don't know what the most is I had in a day. But some days I go and I wouldn't have one, and I'm like, this is fucking amazing. But I couldn't get out of bed. So it's that kind of trade-off where you couldn't do anything, but you didn't feel panicked. Then you have to learn to feel panicked. And just be like, fuck it, I feel panicked. Fuck it, it's fine. So that's kind of my experience with them. And I think I haven't had one in months, but I already haven't had one in 6 months, but it doesn't mean I won't have one, might have one again. I had literally a year of getting them every day. So I just know in future if it does happen, it doesn't mean they won't be as bad. It just, you kind of have even a little bit of reinsurance that you're not dying and that you're not.
That always helps.
Yeah. So, because like when you get that for the first time, you do think like you are dying. I'm like, why the fuck am I having it? Like at the time I was 23. Yeah, 23. Why am I having a heart attack at 23? That's what you feel like. And then you're literally like, your brain starts going places. You're like I have an image of me in like the hospital bed with my family surrounding me, or in the like fucking like funeral home. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my experience with panic and anxiety attacks, and how I differentiate the two. One's kind of more slow building throughout the day, not as intense, but it's still like you feel like you can't interact with the world around you. It's hard to describe because you're not in you're in a different state. It's so weird. Whereas the panic is like that, but it's way more intense, way more focused, and you just, yeah, like when you're having a panic attack, it's a bad feeling. It's not a nice feeling. To be fair, there's some good interpretations of them online, like they're like simulations, and that's exactly what it looks like. So you can always do a little VR experience if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it. No. Not a nice feeling.
Although if you ever get a chance to play VR Star Wars, it's amazing, because in the controller you press the button and the lightsaber comes. Oh my god, it's like, I'm a Star Wars nerd, so maybe you're not like me, but if you like Star Wars, that's amazing in VR. But that's obviously off the point. But coming back to what you said, like I think especially as men, like there's a lot of shame wrapped up in it as well, because when you have those preconceived notions I mentioned earlier of like, if I am a man, I have to be strong, I have to be able to be independent, all these things. Then I know for me, I had a lot of shame surrounded around even that one panic attack that I had, or feeling depressed or anxious, because you feel like, I shouldn't feel this way. I do feel this way, but I shouldn't. And what the hell do I do about it? And it's like you're stuck in this loop, and it's like, yeah, it's really negative. But when you get to work through that, it's really powerful. And yeah, there's a few things I can definitely relate to. Like when I had that panic attack, it was like when I was literally at my worst towards the end of 2018, and I like walked into the bathroom, and all of a sudden, like that, I just like felt a switch, and like as you said, my heart rate, I don't know exactly what it was, but it felt like it was at least 140 or 150, and I had only just walked to the bathroom, and I ended up literally just sitting on the floor like crying. I'm sitting there with my hand in my head and like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, what is going on right now? And I think a big positive that I can take from that was literally the thing that really spurred me on to start working with a counselor, because my girlfriend had already suggested it to me, and I'd been kind of thinking about it for a few weeks, but then the ego came back and was like, I don't need help, or all that typical crap. And that was the thing that really spurred me on. So I think it's powerful for when you can take a positive from what seems like an awful situation. And you mentioned The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Pretty sure that's an amazing book on trauma. Are you familiar with Gabor Mate and his work?
Yes, I am indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
they're like, I think it's difficult because the science hasn't really caught up with what they're doing, and it won't for a very long time. There's Dr. Mate, there's Bessel, there's Peter Levine, there's a few others.
Yeah, you mentioned Peter. I'm not sure if I've read some of his stuff. Like, his name sounds familiar, but I think he was maybe a co-author on some of Bessel's books.
He would have been a co-author on Body Keeps the Score, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
And there's a few other books he has on trauma. Walking the Tiger, I think, is Waking the Tiger.
Okay. Check that out.
There's a few other ones, but yeah, I think their work is ahead of the science. I think it's until you understand and have experienced it to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
That you understand how impactful that their work is, because when you're in a state where you're that vulnerable, like you there's not many people who are niche down enough to understand how to help people there. But on going back to your point kind of about men's mental health and how it can be difficult to speak up, I have a completely alternate view on that. I think to be the strongest man possible, I'd say to myself, I think as men, or as whatever it is, if you're a masculine man or deep down, not that doesn't mean like a egotistical maniac.
Mm-hmm.
I think more of divine masculine. I know that's new age spiritual to some people, that's too waffy, but what I mean by that is a man who's calm, collected, but also understands certain roles that he may or may not have to pursue. If I want to be the best man possible, of course I want to get my ducks in order. If I want to have a child, I couldn't have a child in that state. Not that I want to have a child, touch wood, that doesn't happen anytime soon. Not in a bad way, just a bit too young for that yet, Elon.
Yeah.
But what I mean is I'm not the best friend or the best older brother or the best son, that I could be right now. Not even the best coach. I'm none of those things when I'm in that state. If my bike or a car breaks down, I go to a mechanic. If I feel like I'm just out of shape, I'll go to someone who helps me with that. They're all you as a man opening up and being vulnerable to the fact that I can't do this thing, or not that I need help with this thing. It's probably a better way of putting it. So why is there some block when it comes to what's between your ears? Well, it's because it's an invisible enemy. And if it's an invisible enemy, that means I can't prove that it exists to somebody outside of myself. If I can't prove it, then it's not real. But of course it's real. It's the most real enemy there is in your life. So you're completely fine, and I say this to men, with outsourcing other things to be able to help with. But the one thing that's most important, because you can't show it to other people. If I say I'm anxious as men, and I've had to learn to fight this as well, particularly years ago, until you experience, you understand. Oh, like you almost dismiss it.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
that's our knee jerk reaction, which is mad. And we don't talk about that enough. Our knee jerk reaction is to almost dismiss the plight of other men.
Hmm.
So you have to really do a lot of work to be able to overcome that.
I think that's like your shadow presenting itself.
100%. It's like, oh, you're anxious and depressed. It's like, just do X, Y, and Z. Duh. But that's how we think as men, problem solution. But when this is a problem that there is no specific solution for, like, if you want to lean down, what are you doing? You're training more, you're increasing your step count, you're managing your calories.
Yeah. There's a
And you
structure of things you can
exactly, and
follow.
with a high degree of certainty that that's going to give you X result, or within a small range, a margin there. Same thing with your car, same thing with whatever it may be. Whereas with your mind, I think one of the reasons as well is because there isn't a specific solution. It's very difficult
It's more like
for
a
men to apply.
process.
100%, because there isn't just do this and it's fixed.
Yeah.
So we get so frustrated at it by men that it just builds and builds and builds, and we never end up speaking about it. Whereas for me, I think it's the opposite. Like, if I don't speak about it, like, I think owning it, just like, are you not man? Like, then I can put it back and play into their own belief system and say, are you not man enough to own your problems?
Yeah. It's a true sign of strength to be able to take ownership of your problems. And that means actually allowing yourself to be open and vulnerable with it. Because when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you've, fully become comfortable with that. I don't know about you, but if this was me, if we were in like August 2018 right now, there is no way that I'd be talking about any of those things because I hadn't, accepted that at the time.
100%. Like, even maybe before like the end of last year or the 2020, I might have even like talked about all this stuff, because we all like this. Let's face it, like, this calling a spade, like, all men. I will talk specifically about men, but like, I'm talking about men right now. So all men have demons. They all do. So why not just talk about it? You know what I mean? Like, I think it takes one in every friend group to start the conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it takes with men. It's hard because I don't think there's there's a specific solution to solve this for men. Unfortunately, I think the way in which the world is heading, and with the ever growing competitiveness, there will be, and I hate saying this, but there will be a nature effect that comes in where we can't remove ourselves from survival of the fittest. And what that means is there's always going to be a hierarchy in place. But thankfully now the hierarchy can still live on. So if you're at the bottom of the chain societally, whatever that means, maybe you don't have the best physical attributes. And again, this is all subjective, based on what society says is valuable. You can still procreate and have a family. 200,000 years ago, you'd be kind of eating out of the gene pool.
Yeah. There's a different
So,
story back then in the cave when
yeah,
you're your skin that you took off a pig and you have your spear. Different
so like,
society.
yeah, like, these are modern age problems that, like, we'll solve in time,
Yeah.
but we can't turn away from the fact that they're there and that they're normal,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're not crazy for feeling any certain way. I think that's the biggest thing, telling people you're not crazy, because you
Yeah.
feel crazy. You feel like you're going loco when you're sitting in that, and I think you touched on it as well. When we're sitting in that on that bathroom floor, I'd say, like, one of the things that's gone off your mind, like, why am I feeling like this? I'm fucking crazy. Like, am I crazy? Is there something
Oh
wrong with me?
yeah. Why, what's wrong with me? Why is this happening? Like, I, at the time, physically, was in probably, like, not at my strongest ever, but like I was like physically in a very good position strength
That's
wise. And I was
massive.
like, strength is there,
Yes,
but why do I feel so weak right now mentally? Like,
100%.
it makes
That was
sense.
big with me as well. It's like, but on paper, I'm doing everything that I know
Yeah.
I should be doing. So then you're like, I don't want to feel this way. And if you were to come up to me and say, well, you just need to train more, I am.
Yeah, it's like
And
I
then
have a 200 kg deadlift, but why am I on the floor crying?
This is
What's wrong
conflict.
with me?
This is conflict where A and B don't make C, and for men, we just can't compute that. We can't compute that at all. We're like, but I'm doing this. Why the fuck is this happening? And then our frustration kicks in as men, and we can exacerbate problems. And there's a lot more to the male psyche that is neurotic, I feel, than the female psyche. I feel, but again, that's a generalization. It might not always be true.
Yeah.
From what I've seen and what I've experienced through clients, it seems to be. It seems to be the case, but it's hard either way. It's hard being a man or a woman.
Oh yeah, of course.
They both have their pros and their cons in some ways.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody has demons, regardless of what gender you are, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we've been chatting for like an hour and 20. And like I know that we could probably talk about things for days on end. So I'll probably finish up the conversation on that note. I have a session I need to do in 10 minutes, so I want to prep for that. But that was amazing to go through all of that. I think a lot of that stuff will be definitely helpful for some other people who have maybe felt similar ways. And it's, as always, so great to chat. I think that's one of the reasons why we've been friends for the last few years, is that we have a lot of things like the behavioral psychology and things that we just we think similarly along the same same lines and stuff like that. So it'd be great to maybe do another recording sometime soon, and we could probably go deep on a different topic if you're up for it.
100%. Firstly, thanks for having me on today, and secondly, I feel like we could talk about this stuff for hours and hours. So yeah, anytime, man, anytime whatsoever.
Amazing. So just before we finish up, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, or inquire about coaching, or wanted to follow you on social media, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, awesome. So Instagram and TikTok at Physiotrition. That is by far the easiest place. TikTok is where I'm posting all the time now, and if I'm on Instagram, I'm reposting my TikToks. Just follow along on TikTok. If you're a woman who's in the position where they're just kind of, they want to break the habit of being themselves, as Joe Dispenza once said, and they feel like there's more for them. They want to feel happy and loved in their own skin. That's all I do on my TikToks. I give little practical tips, as well as little cognitive reframings every single day. I think I missed yesterday, right? But since I think the last 4 months, I've posted an average of 1.5 videos a day. So plenty there. And if you want to reach out.
Amazing. Sounds good. So Instagram or TikTok. Amazing. All right. Well, it was great to chat as always, and I'm looking forward to the next one, hopefully sometime soon.
Pleasure, man.
Peace.